find verse 18. Romans chapter 1, find verse 18 when you found it. Please stand for the reading. Romans chapter 1, verse 18, we're going to read through 23. Read from the New King James. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because what may be known of God is manifest in them. For God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, and birds, and four-footed animals, and creeping things. Amen. You may be seated.
Amen.
Today is a day of transition. We're going to transition from the salutation in the book of Romans into Paul's next section, which deals with the wrath of God. Interestingly enough, as important as the salutation was, as Paul does in a lot of his letters, as you go forward, because of what came before, what you get into next seems to have built upon that and has, it seems, a greater impact than what came before. But before we make that assumption, I want to quickly tell you what we've already covered in the salutation. We have covered some facts. Those facts are simple. The gospel belongs to God. The gospel concerns the Son. The gospel has power. It transforms. The gospel causes obedience. But we learned that the power, that dynamis in the Greek, that where we get the word dynamite from, that explosive changing power, the actual initiator of that, or the detonator of that power, is something called faith. So that you can have the facts, but if you don't have the faith, the gospel doesn't work. All right? We ended with Paul explaining that he was trying to get to Rome, wanted to get there, but was being hindered from getting there up to this point, but that he was not ashamed of the gospel because of this power that it had to bring salvation to anyone that believed, the Jew first and also the Greek. And it's verses 17 and 18 where we make the transition, and I think we'll see today that if you're not careful, you'll make an assumption in verse 18 that probably should not be there. So when we get to verse 18, until we get to chapter 3, right around verse 20, all of this is about why God is angry. What you have to understand is God is angry. I didn't say he was. I said he is. Now, here's the thing. What should come to your mind is he angry with me? And I don't care about him being angry with nobody else for the moment. First of all, is he angry with me? And if he's not angry with me, then who is he angry with? And is there anything I can do to help out? All right? So, who in here has ever been angry? Some of y'all have. Some of y'all never been angry. Who in here has ever had a wrath? Got a wrath? the way we think of wrath, the way I like to think of wrath, and then we're going to explain God's wrath, but the way I like to think of wrath is if anger was water, wrath is the water put into a pot and boiling over. All right? Anger is a state of mind, and wrath is an action. Now, I don't know that you have a wrath until you do something to show me your wrath. Your wrath is to destroy or to, it's destroy. That's what wrath is. Wrath is never just to hurt. Wrath means I'm going to make a lasting impression. It means it's permanent, so it's usually destructive. When you think of the wrath of God, what we will find out is that the wrath of God, the Greek word orge, what it actually refers to is not that the way we look at it. We think of an out of control. When you have a wrath, you'll tear up everything. I remember putting a hole in the wall. Wall didn't do nothing to me. Right? You ever tore up something, it didn't do nothing to you. You mad at something else or someone else. You ever been that way? Mad at something, and then go kick something else. Just start tearing everything else up. But you really mad at them. See, God's wrath is a thinking wrath. God's wrath says, I'm mad at you. And if I'm going to pour anything out, it ain't going to be on everything else. My wrath is going to be on you and everything concerning you. That's why God's wrath is not to be played with. God's wrath is to be understood from that perspective. How many of y'all think God's wrath would hurt? Oh, yeah. Right? Anybody ever read Revelation? Yes. You see God's wrath begin to pour out? Yes. That's some wild stuff. But that's why when we get into this text, we got to be careful, because when most people read verse 18, they think that the wrath of God is being poured out. That's not what this says. If the wrath of God were being poured out, some people would make some changes. Amen. So let's first of all, let's see what it says. Verse 18 says, for the wrath of God is revealed. The wrath of God is what? Revealed. I've had some things revealed to me. There's this barbecue place down there just south of 30, just a little bit west of 35, not too far from the Methodist Hospital off of Colorado, that I passed by and seen a bunch of people at. And then I was watching television one evening, watching the Food Channel, one of my favorite channels. And Diners and Dives guy, that guy was on there. He was talking about this particular barbecue place. And then Brother Lacey told me that him and his sons had gone to this place called Lockhart's. And they told me how good it was. Now, Lockhart's has been revealed to me. But I ain't ate there yet. I'm going to get there. I intend to get there. But I haven't experienced it yet. What you've got to understand, when this says that the wrath of God has been revealed, all that means is that it's been shown, it's been explained, but the one that has been revealed to hadn't experienced it yet. It's important to make that distinction, because if you don't, you'll start trying to say that people are experiencing the wrath of God because there was a storm that came through. You ever heard that? Well, yeah, see, God's mad. We had a hurricane. Earthquake just killed 8,000 people. That's God's wrath. That is not God's wrath. That's not God's wrath. It's not storms. It's not global warming. That ain't God's wrath. It's not wars and rumors of wars. All of those are signs, Jesus said. Signs that the end is what? Not yet. Signs that the earth is pregnant with something. Something's going to happen. That's what happens. It says a woman has signs prior to birth. So don't confuse those signs with God's wrath. Because see, when the end comes, God's wrath comes. But God has revealed that wrath. He's revealed it. So let's again look in the text. It says, for the wrath of God is revealed. Is revealed. Now what I want you to understand about that the word is there, the way this is written, This is written in what we call the perfect tense, which means that it's being revealed right now. It is being revealed. His wrath is being revealed. Well, where is it? I want to see it. Do you? You want it revealed? Well, look at what he says. It's revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Now, I'm going to help you out. I'm going to say this right off the bat. The revelation of God's wrath is something that you and I, if we are saved, know from the gospel, but the revelation of God's wrath here is not from the gospel. And if you read a bunch of commentaries, they're going to say it's the gospel. It's not it's being revealed from heaven. And we're going to see what that means in just a second. And then we're going to tie it back into the gospel. But what I want you to understand is the revelation of God's wrath is something that is revealed to unsaved folks. Unsaved folks. We say it one more time. Unsaved folks have had the wrath of God revealed to them. The funny thing is, if Brother Lacey and if me riding by and if Diners and Dive, if that guy, if they're all trying to tell me, and if my own eyes try to tell me that Lockhart's is a good barbecue place, but for whatever reason I've decided, no, it ain't, then guess what? It ain't. You ever seen something and not believed it? You ever heard something and not believed it? See, what's going on here, when something is revealed, that doesn't mean that you believe it. And we're going to find out that these unsaved people have the wrath of God revealed to them, and they simply choose not to believe it. So they have a problem. So, the context of this, everything that I've read all the way down to verse 23 would suggest that the wrath of God is what we would call natural revelation. So let me explain that to you. There's written revelation, that's the Bible, that's the gospel, if it's written or if it's spoken. But then there is a natural revelation that when you look at creation, you should see something about God. Now, what's revealed to the unsaved person, because the question that always comes up, somebody will say this to you, and I love it when atheists do this. They're big on saying this. Okay, what about somebody that's never heard the gospel? Isn't it unfair? Because you say it's the gospel. So if they don't hear it or read it, what about those that were here before Jesus that weren't Jewish? What about them? Well, there is a natural revelation. And by the way, the natural revelation should be better and quicker understood than the written or spoken revelation. Because there is no reason, none whatsoever, for them to go, hey, hold on, hell, I got an excuse. I didn't know. I just didn't know any better. But no, that's not the case. So this is how you do this. Look in Romans 1:17, the verse right prior to this. For in it comes from verse 16, talking about the gospel, the righteousness of God is revealed. Where is the righteousness of God revealed? It's revealed in the gospel. The righteousness of God is revealed in the gospel. Notice the word revealed. We also remember the righteousness of God is not about God's attribute. It's about how you obtain the righteousness of God so that you are right before God. Y'all got that? And remember, the gospel doesn't tell us how right God is. The gospel tells us how wrong we are and how we get right. And that's wrapped up in Christ. That's how we get made right. When you get to verse 18, for the wrath of God is revealed. But hold on, for the wrath of God. So this is, how do you get involved into the wrath of God? This is not talking about, I'm going to reveal what God's wrath is. This is talking about how you end up in it. Y'all catch that? So this means that what he's saying is what in verse 17 is revealed is how you get right. And in verse 18 is revealed how you go wrong. 17, how you get right. 18, how you go wrong. Y'all catch that? So what he says then in verse 17 is revealed from faith to faith. Faith in what? The gospel. But in verse 18, it's revealed from heaven. It's revealed from heaven. If you don't have faith in verse 17, you won't recognize how you get right. But in verse 18, it's simply revealed to you. And guess what? It's revealed regardless of whether or not you have faith. See, verse 17 doesn't happen to you unless you have faith. You don't experience the power. But in verse 18, it don't matter if you believe it or not. I just said something, y'all missed it. See, in verse 17, you can have somebody preach the gospel to you. You can read the gospel. Well, you can get that. But without faith, it don't work. In verse 18, it don't matter if you believe it or not. It's working. It's going to happen. It's being revealed. And in a minute, he's going to say, yeah, and they know it. But they refuse it. So there's a problem going on in verse 18 with people. I'm going to give you the technical term. We call it depravity. Depraved. Their minds are not right. So he says in verse 18, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men. Now, this is not two categories. Ungodliness and unrighteousness. It refers to the same individual. It's just two different ways that it works. First of all, ungodliness. It's an adjective describing men. And when you go into the Greek and you look at ungodliness, you might in a commentary see where someone says irreligious. Irreligious. That's not exactly what that means. What it means, the actual root word means to shrink away from. In other words, to worship, show awe, have respect for. You ever had respect for something? Another way of saying it is simply having reverence. But in the Greek, the alpha is put in front of that word, and that means no reverence. So it means this is an individual who has no reverence for God. None whatsoever. No respect, no reverence. That's what that means. That is an ungodly individual. When you describe it from the adjective form, that's what it means. Someone who's not reverencing God. This would mean someone who's not worshiping God. All right? He says now, what's being revealed is God's wrath, how they go wrong, and it's being revealed to those who don't respect him, who don't want to give him his just due. Kind of like those of us that don't like Brady. You see that? You hear him? You hear him? We don't like Brady. I say it publicly. He ain't done nothing to me. I don't know him personally. I don't even know why I don't like him. Right. I don't. I really don't. I've heard people say he's arrogant. He don't do many interviews. I don't know. But for some reason I don't like him. I don't want his autograph. I don't like him. No, I can't believe somebody stole his jersey. I'm like, for what? I don't, but you know what? Boy, that boy's good. Yes, sir. He really is. As much as I don't like him, he's good. I love people that, well, he really ain't that good. Oh, yes, he is. Yes, I mean, when you do it over and over, you got to be, you just don't get lucky like that all the time. You know, if somebody said Eli, that's a whole nother story. But I'm just saying, he is good. I just don't like him. Ungodly people just don't want God. They just don't like him. They just don't want to respect him. They want, that in their minds, if God, now here's the thing, we're going to find out, in their minds, God does exist. But what they're saying is, I don't want him, he don't, I don't like him. I don't like him. Not only are they ungodly, but they're unrighteous. Ungodliness and unrighteousness. That word unrighteous means that they don't abide by his law. Why would they abide by his law if they don't reverence him? Right? Now here's the deal. If they don't reverence him and don't abide by his law, then if you do, why would you argue with them over his law? Because what do? We preach the gospel to whom? Them. But they don't reverence him and they don't abide by his law. And yet we're going to speak that to them. Here's the funny part. We'll argue with them. My grandmama used to say, you can't argue with a signpost. God never said argue with them. He said present it. Because saving is up to him. See, when the gospel was presented to you, it wasn't you going, yeah, that makes sense. It was God giving you the faith. That was his Holy Spirit enlightening you on what the truth was. That's why you can't go to heaven and say, I heard the gospel and I responded. Because what? I was smart enough to. Wrong. That's not it. God saved me. God gave me the faith that I needed. No wonder I can go off and say, yes, I was picked. I was chosen. Was I special? No. Special enough to God. Yeah. But was I more special than some? No. No, I'm not. And this is why in your evangelism with the gospel, what you've got to understand, God never said, go find somebody that I'm fixing. He didn't say that. He said, spread it. He said, do it. Jesus put it this way. Do it like the farmers do. Just scatter the seed. You don't know what good ground is. You won't know until it comes up and it's fruitful. You don't know. So just go spread it. You didn't know you were good ground. And don't walk away going, yeah, I was good. Hey, you were bad ground made good by God. Yes. So even in this, I can't look down upon them. That's the other thing Christians got to watch out for. Why is this so important? Because I can't look down upon them. I can't. I was just like them. It bothers me. What I got to go evangelize? I got mine. They got to get theirs. Wrong. First of all, you didn't get yours. Yours was given to you. And God used somebody to present the gospel to you. Don't you owe him that? To go present it to someone else? Yeah, but you know, they suppressed the truth. So did you. What does it mean when he says they suppress the truth? It means that they hinder it. They block it. Here's the funny thing about this. It's not that it ain't the truth. That's not the problem. The problem is they hinder it. Do you know in order to hinder something, you have to know that it's there? In order to put a stop to something, you got to know that it's there. So if it's the truth, you know it's the truth. You just hinder it. You just stop. You just don't want the truth. It's funny. That's why when you go in the Old Testament, and I love it where, people like to bring up the scripture, and it's funny to me. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. See, the fool says in his heart, there is no God. That's what the fool says. But when you read it in Hebrew, it says something else different. In Hebrew, it says the fool says in his heart, no to God. Not that the fool doesn't think there is a God. The fool knows there's a God. He's just saying no to God. You ever done that about anything? You know it's true, but you just say no to it anyway. You know what you're saying? I don't care. That's how you hinder it. I don't care. So what? See, when you're a so what kind of person, that means it might be so what? You're supposed to pay for that before you get out the store. So what? I'm supposed to pay for it. I didn't pay for it last week. Does that mean you didn't break the law? You did break the law. It's still the truth. That's what they're doing. They're hindering. So he says, these are individuals who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. In their wrongness, they suppress the truth. They hinder the truth. Because, now verse 19 is a killer. Because what may be known of God is what? Manifest in them. I want you to catch what I said earlier when I said it should be easier for them to recognize God than for someone who hears the gospel. That's why when we hear the gospel, the Holy Spirit has to come and illuminate the truth for us. But see, this is why this is revealed, and it has nothing to do with faith, because it's already manifested in them. What's being revealed, they already knew was coming. They have just chosen to hinder the truth of it. The word manifest, by the way, in the Greek means to be laid out, like you would go to a play. You know when you go to a play and they lay it all out in front of you and you watch all of it? That's what this means. It means that the person who is not saved, this ungodly, unrighteous person, is actually within them. They know their condition. They know that God's wrath is real. They know that something's going to happen. It's been revealed, and it's being revealed. They know it because God created all of us to know it. Amen. That's why someone that says, I don't believe God exists, they are lying. But how do you deal with a liar? Tell them they're a liar? That don't work either, right? Have you ever done this? I won't even say if you know anyone. Because some of y'all in there start pointing at people. But have you ever done this? You ever lied so much on the lie that you come out believing the lie? I mean, it must have been. And I know we do that kind of stuff because that's a political trick. Just keep saying it over and over. Even though people know it's a lie, after a while, guess what? They'll believe it. They'll just believe it. We deceive ourselves. This is what you call self-deception. And we see it throughout the New Testament, this warning of self-deception. Self-deception is when you continually lie to yourself until the point to where the lie now becomes the truth. You suppress the truth. You knew what the truth was, but you do everything you can to stop it. I'll simply just deny it. I'll simply lie on it until I believe it. And that's what's going on here. He says, because what may be known of God is manifested in them, for God has shown it to them. I want you to catch that. This is why I don't have to argue about the existence of God. Because God has already killed the argument. They just don't want him. They really don't want him. See, all of that other stuff is just noise. It is distractions. All of that other stuff wanting to argue with you about the church or about what the Bible says or who wrote it or all of that, that is total distraction from the main problem, which is you are suppressing the truth that God has put in you and shown you, like someone would take you to a play and say, watch it play out. There is no way you don't know, is what he's saying. That's the revelation of God's wrath. It is revealed to these people. Now, he wants to get into how they reject it. So the rejection of God's wrath starts in verse 20. For since the creation of the world, since when? The creation of the world. So for those that want to argue about what Jesus didn't show up to but about 2,000 years ago, hold on. Since the creation of the world, God's been speaking. Amen. Amen. Who did he speak to? Everybody. Yeah, the gospel message may not have gotten to everybody, but a message did get to everybody. Since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen. Notice these words, clearly. Since, it's always been there, clearly seen. It's not ambiguous. It's not muddied up. It's not something you might have missed. It's clear. It's clear. How do I mess up something that is clear? How do I mess that up if it's clearly seen? Have you ever seen anyone that's messed something up that's clearly seen? How do they do that? How do I do it? Because I've done it. Have you not done it? Here's the funny thing. We like to blame. Even when it's clear. Well, yeah, I would have got that, but... Yeah, I would have... I saw it, but at that time, however, see, what was going on was, let me explain, because there were circumstances. No, you clearly saw it. You clearly saw it. The light was red. Did you see the light was red? I saw the red light. Do you know what red light means? I know what it means. Well, what was going on? I was singing the song, I was in a whole other world. I saw the red light. My brain disengaged. So I decided to T-bone the car that came through. I clearly saw it. I saw it. Is that an excuse? No, you've clearly seen. Clearly. That's what he's saying. Being understood, not only do you clearly see it, but you understand it. How did I understand it? By the things that are made. By creation itself, I understand that God has a wrath. In order for me to understand that God has a wrath and to see what God's wrath would be in creation, I have to first acknowledge that God does exist. And here's the thing. When I acknowledge that God does exist by his creation, that tells me what kind of wrath he has. If he is that powerful to create all of this, if he gets mad, and if he's mad at me, and he created all of this, I'm in trouble. I should recognize that. Well, he's saying, no, it's not that you should, you do. You do. Even his eternal power and Godhead. The creation tells us all about what kind of power he has and what kind of God he is. It's real simple. The more man learns about the universe, the bigger God gets. And even man has come to the conclusion, think about it, as smart as man thinks man is. Man has come to the conclusion that man doesn't know how this creation came. They got theories. Big Bang. Oscillating. Always was. Had to start somewhere, didn't it? Maybe. See, when you get into a bunch of different theories, you go down roads you don't want to go down. Well, if God created it, who made God? See how smart I am? I just messed you up. No, you ain't messed up nothing. You didn't mess up anything because first of all, now you've acknowledged that God made it. Now you're worried about who made God. Nobody. Because you're basing every observation that you have on his creation. If his creation was created, he's the source. End of story. Does he have a source? Do you care? Here's my thing with that. That's another distraction. Do you care? Who's the one you should be worried about? The one that created you. Right? It's kind of like grandparents and parents. You know, I'm talking about real parents. Not the parents that turn their kids over to the grandparents. Real parents. I'm talking real parents. You know, if you're a kid, if Big Mama says it, you go do it. Not because, if you got real parents, not because Big Mama said so. Because you worried about Mama. See, sometimes you got big mamas that are really mamas. Because Mama ain't. But when you really understand what's going on, you worried about the one that birthed you. Not the one that birthed her. Not the one that birthed him. My concern is there. So even in that argument of, well, who's the source of God? What does that matter? First of all, there is no source. But let's set that aside. And let's say there is. What do you care? Because you ain't dealing with that one. You're dealing with the creator that created you. You need to deal with the one that put you here. You need to deal with the one that's manifested stuff to you. That's the one's wrath that you got to worry about. He never said anywhere in his word that the wrath was going to come from someplace else. Right? So all I should be worried about is what actually pertains to me. This is the part of the Bible that really gets down to the individual. Because the individual's in trouble. They're without, so he says, so they are without excuse. There it is. Why is it if somebody hadn't heard the gospel, they're without excuse? Because they have a better opportunity to respond to God than someone who's heard it. Because God manifested in them and then showed them not just that he was God, but that he would get them. See, that's the thing. Because the funny thing is when we go out and we do evangelism, most of us don't evangelize the right way. We evangelize like this. God loves you. God is kind. God, you know, we ought to go out and tell them, God has a wrath. Do you understand you're incurring the wrath of God if you reject him? Why would I say that to you? Because he's shown you and he manifested it in you and you're suppressing the truth. See, if you go to hell, that's your fault. He did everything he could to keep you from going. What he told me to do was come tell you, you're going. And this is the righteousness of God revealed where? In the gospel. But it don't work until you have faith. And my job stops right there. I can't give you faith. I can't argue faith. I can't intellectually do faith. What I can do is plant the seed, and that's just planting the seed. Because some of the seeds that we're planting are not seeds. They're not seeds. Or they're the wrong kind of seed. Because some of the seeds that we're planting in the gospel, we miss this part. God has a wrath. And it is going to get some folks. God has a wrath. Verse 21, because although they knew God. Oh, wait a minute. Do y'all see that? Yeah. Over and over, he's making the claim that the unsaved know God. Not just are knowing him, but knew. Past tense. Already got it. They already got it. Although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God. So what did they do? They didn't glorify him as God, even though they knew him as God. Paul, what happened? Nor were thankful. You might want to circle, nor were thankful. Because in some upcoming sermons here, like next week and the week after, we're going to get into some dicey stuff. And what we're going to find out is the reason for that dicey stuff is because these people are unthankful for what God has done in the way that he's created them. Plain and simple, just plain unthankful. You know what happens when you're unthankful? You want something else. Right? Ain't that what you want? You want something else. You ever got a Christmas present and weren't thankful? You know what you like to do? Because some of you do it. You take it what? Back. That's why people give you a gift receipt. Because they don't want you to know that they didn't pay nothing for it anyway in the first place. Got it on the clearance side. The only person that puts in the receipt that says how much they paid for it is the person that wants you to know. This cost me a grip. So why are you taking it back? Because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful. But became futile. Y'all know what futile means? Futile. I look at futile and I say they were just stupid. In their thoughts. Here's the problem. It's the thinking. It's the mind. The mind is bad. It's messed up. See, later on when he says he turns them over to a reprobate mind, what he's saying is I'm turning them over to their mind. I'm not making their mind reprobate. It's already reprobate. It's bad thinking. And their foolish hearts were darkened. Who darkened their hearts? They did. Who's the only one that can enlighten them? Lighten up their hearts? God. Who's the one they don't want? God. That's the rejection. The rejection works quite simply this way. They're rejecting what God has put in them and shown them and what God has given them to observe about him that confirms what he's put in them and shown them. So there's nothing else, in essence, that God can do to help them out other than for them to maybe hear the gospel and have him enlighten them on that. Because they're rejecting what is right there. This is that whole thing of I ain't going to believe until I see it. That's a lie. You don't believe half of what you see. So then the next thing is there are some ridiculous results that come from rejecting God. This is how stupid it gets. Verse 22, professing. See that word? What does it mean to profess? Claim. Claiming to be wise when you've just shown how stupid you were. Again, question. Why do we argue with unsaved people about God? Don't worry, I've been there, I've done it. Have you ever done it? And then you walk away feeling downright stupid. Just like, man, you're thinking, what do I have to do? Ain't nothing you can do. If God put it in and showed it to them and then gave a whole creation to let them know that he is, I mean, for me, that just put everything in order. I'm going to tell you why I put everything in order. Because my question is always, why are we even here? Why couldn't we just be created? God come to us, look at us and say, do you believe me or not? And we go, yes or no. Why we got this thing called life? The whole entirety of life is wrapped up in what's going on right here. God is showing them his wrath. We were created for a purpose. Everyone has an opportunity to have an eternal life, which is the real life that you want with God. This temporary thing that's going on here is where God gets to show us who he is. And they're not taking advantage of it. Instead, they act like this is all there is. Which means that their minds are futile. And if their minds are futile, why in the world am I arguing with them? Because they're professing something. They're professing their wisdom when I'm looking at it going, man, that's straight up foolishness. And how do you argue with a fool? You can't. You know what you can do? You can tell them and not argue with them. I think evangelism will be a lot easier if we stop arguing with people because we get frustrated. That's what's frustrating to us. Oh, I ain't gonna say nothing to them. They just look like they're ready for an argument. You find out somebody like, well, you know, what about that guy over there? Oh, I know him. That's Professor so-and-so. I ain't finna talk to him. What am I gonna talk to a professor for? He's a professor and an atheist? What am I gonna say to him? The same thing you would say to the GED guy. The same thing you would say to the dropout. The same thing you would say to the 9-year-old. It's the same message. God never said, I need you to fix my message so that people can understand it. He said, I need you to present it. Amen. Period. I'll get them to understand it. Stop looking at other people and deciding whether or not they're going to understand it or not. Because the reality of it is, if you just scatter seeds, some of it is going to be on good ground and most of it is not. Yes. Professing to be wise, they became fools. Grandma said, don't call nobody no fool. Paul did. Verse 23, and change the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man. And we'll miss that first thing, because the thing is, first of all, how do you change God's glory? Simple. You take it from him and put it on yourself. You take it from him and put it on yourself. Let me show you how that works. Ask a question. Does God exist? Answer comes back, no. Question. Okay, where does God not exist? He doesn't exist anywhere. Really? So you're telling me that you have the knowledge of the entire universe. Maybe he's on the moon. Maybe he's in Saturn. Perhaps he's in Andromeda galaxy. Perhaps he's at the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Perhaps he's everywhere and you haven't seen him. But you're telling me you've been everywhere. And you know that God does not exist anywhere. Well, my goodness, that means that you're all-knowing. Which means that you must be God yourself. Now they're going to sit there and go, that's not it. Well, yes, that is. You took his glory and just put it on yourself because you claim to be all-knowing. And atheists are so sophisticated with the way that they suppress the truth that now they've come up with soft atheism. It's soft now. It ain't hard anymore. It's soft. What does that mean? Weak? It's weak. So does God exist? Not really. Not really? Yeah, because if you go into where he doesn't exist, I'm just going to say, well, I don't know what's there, but I don't think it is. I don't think he's there. I mean, the evidence tells me that he's probably not there. But when has the evidence ever told you something that wasn't? Happens all the time. So again, truth of the matter is, this is what's going on. They're taking God and they're taking his glory and they're bringing it on themselves. Now, when you bring it upon yourself, maybe perhaps you go, that's just a little too presumptuous of me. So then I get to the next part. And birds. Do y'all understand the amount of sarcasm that Paul is using here? He goes to birds. What is a bird in relationship to man? Remember what Jesus said talking about worry. Look at the birds. And then at the end of the birds, he says, are you not more than they? If I'm more than a bird, why would I take a bird and turn a bird into God? Paul is saying, you're taking things that you are more than, and you're making them God. You're bowing down to a statue of a bird. And now, if you think that Paul's making that up, please go look up paganism. Go look at the statues. Go see what you see. I mean, it's bird heads on people. It's half men, half goats. Goats! What is a goat? I mean, what do you do with a goat? Get some milk? Goat's milk? That's all I know. I don't know what else you can do. What? You can eat them?
Oh, yeah.
So I can eat them?
Oh, yeah.
All right, I can do that. Make a rub? Maybe some clothing. Goat stew. Goat stew. I'm going to take something I'm going to eat and make that God. That's why it says in 4-footed animals. And then it even goes to creeping things. Creeping things are insects. I mean, we're down with something we step on. Now that's God. I just made all of that God. That's ridiculous. It's the ridiculous results of rejecting what God has put in someone. They come up with this mess. So when you look around and you see all of the things that go on, you say, well, how can these people believe that way? It's ridiculous. Understand what's really going on. They're rejecting what's been revealed in them and manifested to them that they can observe. And the problem is they just haven't experienced the actual wrath of God yet. The good part is the yet part. So let's wrap this up. God has revealed to the unrighteous that he exists through his creation and implanting his existence in them by exposing them to his wrath. That's a good thing. Because that's what you got to work with. This should start to tell you how your evangelism should evolve. It should evolve into you saying, this is where I was. Even though God had shown me his wrath. Even though God had manifested it in me. Even though I could see it in all of his creation. For some stupid reason, I rejected it. And in my rejection of him, I was actually putting myself in his position. Because all of a sudden, I thought I was the captain of my own soul. I thought it was all about me and whatever I thought. Thank goodness somebody came to me and told me the truth. And this is the truth. And now you present the gospel. But the reality of it is the gospel should begin with an understanding of where someone is. But you and I have to put ourselves in that position to let them know it ain't about arrogance. I'm not talking down to you. I'm not looking down upon you. Because everything that follows after this is where I say the church has really fallen off the cliff on this. Everything that comes after this was us. We were all in this condition. So I'm pointing out everybody else's flaws and faults and all of this stuff because they're going to hell and they're this, that, or the other and how bad and terrible. That's where you were. Where's the love? Where's the love? All you're doing is seeing what you were. And that's what you got to say. This is what I was. This is where I was. This is the condition that I was in. When he says no backbiters and all of that and no murderers and all. And what does Paul say? Thus were some of you. That's what I was. Who's the best person to tell somebody about their condition? Someone that's been through it? Well, there you go. That's what I was. That's what I was. Secondly, their rejection is without excuse. But hold them accountable to that. Let them know. Now you do understand, by rejecting God, you don't have an excuse. You don't. If you understand what hell is, if you get down to some of the things about some of the nuances of hell, this is mind-blowing. Because what he's revealed to them that they've been suppressing, see, when they go to hell, they can't suppress anymore. They totally see it. No one's going to hell looking back going, Lord, if you had, no, they're not going to say if nothing. They're not going to say if nothing. They're going to say, I did it, it was my fault. Every opportunity I had. He said, what was the opportunity? You lived before Jesus. Yeah, but you know what? I saw the sun, the moon, and the stars. I saw seasons change. I looked at this vast creation, and it was telling me what I already knew. There's somebody out there bigger than me. Here's the funny thing. If I'd have just worshiped whatever was out there that created this, I'd have been worshiping Christ. Now watch what I just said. I said you'd have been worshiping the second person of the Trinity. How do we get salvation? The second person of the Trinity. All things were created by him and through him. It is right there. It's real simple. They're going to go to hell with that. 3, they have replaced the only true God with the gods of their making. How do I really go about suppressing this thing? I know God exists, so I'll make him up. That's why you have all of these gods and all of these religions and all of these faiths. That's why you have Buddhism, Hinduism, and all of that stuff. And everything is someone trying to make up for the fact that God has already shown them who he is out there and in here. And they're saying, I know he exists, but I want him to exist like I want him. So I'm going to make him into this. Because the last thing I want is the gospel. Because if I get the gospel, that's going to make me do what? Obey. I don't want to obey nobody but me. And number 4, if they can't find the God revealed through creation, we must preach the gospel so they can have the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith. That means that if they can't get God's understanding that way, and we have the opportunity to get them to have God's understanding the other way, we need to do what we can, which is present the gospel to them, and then let God take it from the faith to faith part. So what Paul is basically telling the Romans is, look at where you are. Because where you are in Rome, all around you is paganism. It's rampant. And here's the thing. While they think you're stupid, what you need to understand is they're actually the stupid ones. And you know what stupid really means? Stupid means you know better. They actually know better. You don't have to argue with them. They're sitting up there saying, Paul hadn't come because they want to argue with me. And I'm telling you, I want to get there. Why do I want to get there? Because I want to see some fruit. Because I know if the gospel gets preached to these people, we got an opportunity for some fruit. Let's go scatter some seed. He's excited about it. And the funny thing is, for some reason, Christians are scared of folks that already know God exists, that already recognize God has a wrath, that are always going about suppressing the truth, that are even creating gods of themselves and of other things, and we scared to tell them about the true God that they already know in the first place. That makes us kind of silly. God bless you. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for giving us this word. We thank you, Father, for your word. We thank you for having the opportunity to understand that when it comes to